You are listening to the Novel Writing Podcast, episode 106. Grab a cup, cozy up, and let's get to writing. Today, we're going to talk about the second draft. In every episode of the podcast so far, we've ended by telling you to remember that the first draft is garbage. But if the first draft is garbage, what does that make the second draft? One of our premium members asked this, saying, is the second draft just slightly more polished garbage? And then I knew I had to do an episode on this. For as much as we talk about getting the rough, garbage first draft out, so many writers, practically all of them if I'm being honest, struggle to know what to do once they type the words, "the end," on the last page of their manuscripts. And that's a valid question. The 60-day novel writing challenge is designed to help you write your first draft, but it also works great for rewrites, which is what I used it for the very first time we ran the challenge. I rewrote my enormous and enormously messy first draft of my first book into something much more streamlined, much more plot-oriented, and much better, even though we ultimately blew it up again in the second round of developmental edits. While there's a lot of resources out there to help you write and finish the first draft, not many exist to support writers pursuing the second draft and onward, without falling into a death spiral of always editing and rewriting, but never moving on to publication. For a bit of a bird's eye view of my writing process, I consider the second draft to be the draft you send to someone. Whether that's alphas or a developmental editor, the second draft is the first version of your manuscript intended for someone else's eyes. If the first draft's only job is to exist, because you can't edit a blank page, the second draft's primary job is to clean up the first draft enough that you're not subjecting critique partners to obvious plot holes, major inconsistencies, or word vomit that will 100% include typos and butchered grammar. I firmly believe that if you intend to give your book to a critique partner, that it can't be the first draft that you frantically disgorged from your brain, either during the 60-day challenge or whatever process you follow to write a first draft. Everyone writes in unique ways, meaning that you probably have notes and comments for yourself all over the draft, you spelled a character's name 3 different ways and then couldn't decide on the right spelling, or you didn't notice that you swapped letters, you forgot to resolve a foreshadowing clue from the first act that would have made your climax way more powerful, things like that are as unique to you as my idiosyncrasies are to me. When we take a long time to write a first draft, we forget what we wrote at the beginning, and we forget to connect things together when we reach the end. I've done this too. For the October 2023 round of the challenge, I started writing the first draft of book 4 in my series. And spoiler, I only got 18,000 words before my developmental review for book 3 with Haley, so I actually didn't hit 50,000. Anyway, even though I only had 18,000 words for book 4, I still found myself forgetting little things I had planted in the first 5,000 words, the first 10,000 words, things like that. And it's those little things you forget that make the second draft a necessary step before you hand it over to critique partners or editors. I would never give Haley the raw, unedited, unlooked through first draft manuscript of any of my books. Even book 1, the monstrosity that it was, went through cleanup before I gave it to Haley for its first crack at developmental edits. Everyone's editing and rewriting process is different. For me, my first and second drafts are done in Scrivener, but you can pick whatever program you like to work in. So what I did with my first draft of book 3 before I gave it to Haley was this. I read through the book from start to finish and make notes for myself along the way for things that I know I have to address. While I'm reading through it, I make the fixes that I already know I have to make, that I made comments for myself during the first draft, and those things are easy to fix in the moment. If things involve future parts of the story, they go in as new comments on a separate rewrite notes document in Scrivener. And then I go and I make those changes. And this is honestly the longest part of the whole process. Some of these changes are the plot hole fixie type changes, and others are as minor as answering questions I had for myself, or even reworking large scene blocks that I was unhappy with the first time through. This is important. During the first draft, we can know we're writing something that we will have to fix later. But the point of the first draft is to get it out of our heads so that we can fix it later. I had a big section of book 3 like this where I just was not thrilled with it in the first draft, but I couldn't spend time during that first draft making it work better. I mean, I actually tried and it was like pulling teeth, and so I just stopped trying and knowing that it would have to go through those fixes when I was doing the second draft. And that's also why I go through developmental. Some of the issues that I knew that I had in the first draft that I knew I couldn't fix on my own, those are the ones that I take to Haley for review, and I leave them as, as fixed as I possibly can in the draft. But I know they're not going to be perfect. So once I'm relatively happy with the changes that I have made, I read through it again just to catch all the little things that maybe popped up in the meantime, and then also double check that I didn't miss anything major. I export it to Microsoft Word after that, and then because Scrivener's dictionary is vastly subpar to Microsoft's, I make sure there are no typos that I can fix with Word's spell check engine. This is like the bare minimum any writer can do to protect critique partners from annoying typos. And then I read through it again if necessary. This is besides typo hunting. And I make comments for myself that maybe didn't transfer over from Scrivener. Now, at the time of this recording, I don't use alpha readers. I go from first draft to second draft to developmental edits, meaning no reader eyeballs see the story before Haley does. Now, this might change for future drafts, but because I'm sending this straight to Haley, I make a clean copy with 0 comments, leaving all of my comments and questions for Haley as notes for myself in the original draft so that she's not distracted by comments or questions when she's doing her review. And then when we actually meet to go over the whole draft, I bring those questions up during that point. So you could do this whole process before sending to alphas, not necessarily developmental editors. But the point is that the second draft is intended for other people to read, while the first draft doesn't need to peek into the light of day for anyone other than you. Your second draft might still suck, but the point of the first rewrite or the first self-edit to even make it into the second draft is to learn how to improve your own work, to learn how to recognize problem sections, even if you can't fix them on your own, and to learn how to prepare something for someone else to read. I'm not saying your second draft has to be or will be perfect. It won't. And that's okay. The second draft is just something that is okay enough that a critique partner won't have to wade through all the problems you would have caught and fixed yourself before sending it off. Your first draft is supposed to be garbage. We don't want to present garbage to our critique partners, editors, or alphas. They deserve better than that, and the better is that second draft. If you're listening to this in real time, we are gearing up for the January 2024 round of the 60-Day Novel Writing Challenge. If you have your garbage first draft done and you want to rewrite it, the challenge can help you do that. You just go through it with a slightly different focus, more on the writing tips and the details, rather than the big guns like character worksheets, world building, and major plot development. Unless your second draft involves blowing enough things up that those are important again. I encourage you to come join us for the January round, whether it's to write your garbage first draft or rewrite it into a critique partner ready second draft. You can find the link to sign up in the description. That is it for today's episode. Thanks for joining me, and remember, your second draft is your story's first chance to improve. Thanks for listening to the Novel Writing Podcast. If you're ready to stop struggling and start finishing your novel, check out the 60-Day Novel Writing Challenge. It's a step-by-step program designed for solo writers to complete their first draft with clarity and focus. Visit the link in the description to learn more.